If you want to understand things like critical race theory, you have to first understand what critical theory is. Did you know that? That the grandfather, the ancestor of critical race theory, is critical theory, which is something that was put forward by a man named Karl Marx. And Karl Marx's idea is that you take people and you divide them into groups. For him, it was classes. You had those who were rich and powerful, and you had those who were not rich, they were poor, and they had no power. And you would get them fighting against one another. Well, all that's happened is they've switched the classes, the economic classes, for racial classes. And when you get racial classes fighting against one another, white against black, black against white, or Asian or Hispanic, or black and brown against white, whatever, you start to create the chaos necessary for the revolution. You can also divide people the way we've been divided over gender lines, racial lines, economic lines, now medical lines. We have those who have gotten the you-know-what and those who have not gotten the you-know-what. And when that happens, people are now looking at, you're the enemy. No, you're the enemy. And you think and I'm going to protect myself. And all of a sudden, people start fighting to produce the great chaos that Mao said is the opportunity to seize the greatest amount of power and strip people of their rights. Do you feel how your freedoms have been stripped? And by the way, freedom is not to do whatever you want. Our founders in the American Covenant point out that freedom is to do what's right in the eyes of God. It's to worship and love God. It's to love your neighbor freely with the money that you've worked for so that you can be generous to help them. It's the freedom to educate your children in the ways of God that produce blessing for generations. Do you see that? It's about life in your heart and then freely expressing it in compassion and kindness and in reverence to God freely, without someone saying, no, 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 this is how you're going to spend your money. This is what you're going to do to stay safe. This is who you're going to worship and how. People in countries with no freedom actually don't date their calendars by the birth of Christ. They date them by the birth of their dictator kings, like they do in North Korea. They don't know about freedom of enterprise that produces things like the internet. They're still in dark ages in many ways. It's crazy, but it's actually true. In China, they had something called the class conflict theory. So if you're familiar with CRT, the twin brother of that is the class conflict theory. And that essentially, these are two twin brothers, and the grandfather is Karl Marx, who's put forth critical theory. And it's all designed not to reconcile and bring us together and bring healing, but to divide us even further, create chaos and destruction. And then what Mao did is he unleashed the Red Guards. Who were they? They were the youth that were designed to go after those who were against his plans of consolidating power. And they were told to create chaos through rioting and violence and burning and the destruction of property, and to eliminate the four olds. Olds, O-L-D-S, like the old things, right? And here were the four olds. They were the four olds: the old culture, the old ideas, the old customs, the old names. Why? Because if you get rid of the old ideas and the old customs and the old culture, you can then usher in the new culture. You can have the Great Reset. You can have the new ways of thinking. Have you noticed? Let me ask you a question. Has our history been erased? Are there those in the educational world, in the cultural world, in the media world, in the governmental world, who are looking to get rid of the old character and virtue, the old values of this nation, the old history of our godly forefathers and foremothers? Are they trying to get rid of the way we date the world from the birth of Christ? And now we have not just BC and AD, now we have BCE. Standing for before the common era. No, before Christ. And Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. Not common era and before common era. Do you see the exact parallel of what's happening? You rewrite the names, you rewrite the calendar, you get rid of the four olds and you bring in the new.